This is the AEW Dynamite July 31, 2024 full show results video which takes place at Bon Secours Wellness Arena in Greenville. AEW American Champion MJF comes out. He insults the crowd and calls his championship the most important title in the world. MJF calls Will Ospreay a redcoat terrorist and says he will beat him again at AEW All In and tells the crowd to show some respect and rise for their American hero. Ospreay runs in, and MJF escapes and Ospreay says he's going to put MJF through pain that he can't imagine. He says he knows Americans love their flag, but none of the fans acknowledge MJF's title. Ospreay says no one acknowledges his title because the former AEW International Champions worked hard to build its prestige and tells MJF he's not worthy of holding the title. Ospreay says he will restore prestige to the title and MJF says he won't talk smack, as he lets his actions do the talking. He tells Ospreay he's going to annihilate him and he has a feeling that Ospreay won't make it to AEW All In because he's about to face Lance Archer. Then we saw a match between Lance Archer vs Will Ospreay, and the result of this match was Will Ospreay defeated Lance Archer by pinfall with the hidden blade. MJF runs in and attacks Ospreay and he drops him with a brainbuster, then Kyle Fletcher makes the save, and MJF flees. Fletcher says Ospreay is his best friend, and he is his brother and calls MJF a narcissistic asshole. Fletcher calls himself the karma that's coming to bite MJF in the ass and says MJF doesn't care about America. As for foreign wrestlers, he says dreamt of moving to America because this is where the best wrestle. He says his dreams have come true in America and he is sick of the same old MJF bullcrap. MJF teases coming down to fight Fletcher but says no and says Fletcher doesn't call the shots, but he will give him a match next week. MJF says he will break Fletcher's neck and leave him in a pool of his own blood and MJF says it will all be Ospreay's fault. After a video package recaps Chris Jericho's match against Minoru Suzuki, Alex Marvez interviews Chris Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith. Bill is holding a cake, and he says they're celebrating Jericho reaching 102 days as FTW champion. Jericho hypes up his reign and says he's going to smash Katsuyori Shibata's face last week. He says Shibata is all alone and Jericho says Brian Keith will take Shibata out and Keith says Shibata should mind his business, and next, he'll be his business. Then we saw a CMLL World Women's Championship Eliminator match between Willow Nightingale vs Kris Statlander, and the result of this match was Kris Statlander defeated Willow Nightingale by pinfall when Hathaway gave Statlander a steel chain and Kris hit a discus clothesline. Statlander attacks Nightingale with a chair after the match, but officials run in to separate them. Statlander hits some of the officials, and the referee helps Nightingale to the back. Bryan Danielson comes to the ring and addresses the crowd and he notes that you don't know that it's the gold old days until they're almost gone. Danielson reflects on being forced to retire and he says the last 3 years in AEW have been the most fun times he's had in his career and says he was able to be present for special moments. He says he promised his daughter that he would stop wrestling full-time when she was 7, and he promised his family the contract he signed with AEW would be the last wrestling contract that he signed. Danielson says that the contract is up tomorrow, and he had promised to give it his all every time he wrestled. He says that he vowed to win the world title when he came to AEW, and he hasn't done that yet. Danielson says AEW All In will be his last shot and he notes that doctors don't want him to wrestle, but he promises to go to Wembley Stadium to give it his all and Danielson promises to go all in with his mind, body, and soul at AEW All In. AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland interrupts and Strickland says he respects the hell out of Danielson for inspiring wrestlers like him to chase their dreams. He says that if it was another time, he would be rooting for him, but Swerve says this is his time, and he's one of a kind. Danielson says this is not an achievement award, as the title showed that the holder was the best in the world. Strickland highlights how he led Team AEW to victory at Blood and Guts and he wonders whether Danielson's body was just unable to hold up to the pressure of being a champion. Strickland says he's the most dangerous man in AEW, and Danielson will not win the title at AEW All In. Danielson promises Strickland that he will never wrestle again if he loses and Danielson puts his career on the line at AEW All In, and Strickland shakes his hand. Backstage, Jeff Jarrett greets Danielson and Danielson challenges Jarrett to face him next week. Then we saw a match between Roderick Strong, Rush and the Beast Mordos vs Orange Cassidy, Mark Briscoe and Tomohiro Ishii, and the result of this match was the Beast Mordos, Rush and Roderick Strong won the match by pinfall when Rush headbutts Briscoe, and Mordos spikes Briscoe for the win. Backstage, the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass say they're coming to AEW Collision and they say they're looking for FTR, but FTR is nowhere to be found. Max Caster says they're scared of the Acclaimed and says maybe FTR aren't serious wrestlers because they didn't show up. Anthony Bowen says they'll come to Collision, and they hope FTR shows up. Mariah May is asked about attacking Toni Storm. She says Storm didn't do anything to her, and she gave Mariah everything she ever wanted. May says she loved Storm, but it was her turn to eat. Toni Storm comes to the stage and says she loved Mariah May too, and Storm says it will be the romance of a bloody lifetime when they clash at AEW All In. Then we saw a match between Kamille versus Brittany Jade, and the result of this match was Kamille defeated Brittany Jade by pinfall. Moan addresses the crowd and she introduces Kamille as the newest member of Moan Corporation. She says Baker has been tormenting her, and it's like she's obsessed with her. Moan says Baker has been suspended and AEW is her house now, and she's going to turn it into a mansion. She says losing to Moan will be the best thing to ever happen to Baker. In the main event of the show, we saw a match between Darby Allin versus Hangman Adam Page, and the result of this match was Darby Allin defeated Hangman Adam Page by pinfall with a roll-up. Darby was happy, and Hangman was very angry, and the show goes off the air.